June stretched in the dimly lit training hall, its wooden floors polished smooth from years of practice. His muscles ached from another intensive sparring session, and thoughts of his upcoming tournaments swirled through his mind. No matter how much renown he earned for his impeccable strikes and well timed kicks, he felt something was missing. Others called him fierce, but he knew that deep down, his heart was tender, and that was a side of himself rarely given the chance to emerge. He bowed to the sensei who had watched quietly from the corner, then began sweeping the floor, as was his routine at the end of each session. The swish of the broom bristles against the wooden boards calmed him, ushering him away from thoughts of jabs and kicks to a more soothing realm. His plan for the afternoon was the same as always: complete his chores, collect his training bag, and head out to the courtyard behind the building. There, in a secluded corner, grew a small garden of medicinal herbs. Although the building was primarily dedicated to martial arts training, it also served as a modest community center where aspiring herbalists and healers occasionally stopped by. Sometimes they came to harvest what they needed from the garden, sometimes they came to rest their minds. June found solace in that little patch of green, though he was never sure why. Perhaps it was the subtle, earthy fragrances or the simple beauty of leaves and blossoms that reminded him that life could be gentle. He discovered it one restless afternoon after an argument with a sparring partner. Wandering the corridors, he'd spotted this unsuspecting door to the courtyard. Beyond it lay wild thyme, creeping along the stone paths, tall stems of lemon balm, a few sprigs of rosemary, and in the rear corner, a luscious patch of mint. He'd stood there for what felt like hours, inhaling the mingled scents of serenity until his spirit was revived. On this day, as he stepped outside, June was startled to see someone kneeling down near the rows of plants, carefully uprooting weeds by hand. His footsteps drew the visitor's attention, and she glanced over her shoulder. She had wide, curious eyes and hair loosely tied back in a practical ponytail, with a little sprig of lavender poking out from behind her ear. Her sandals were lightly dusted with soil, the cuffs of her pants muddy from tending the plants. June felt a swift rush of admiration for the diligence she radiated. She smiled a bit shyly, turning back to pull another small weed from the soil before looking up again. "Hello," she said, voice gentle but bright. "I've been coming here for a few days now. I didn't realize this courtyard was shared with the martial arts school, so I hope I'm not intruding. The caretaker said I could collect some herbs. My name's Hana," he introduced himself politely. "I'm Jun. I train here." Unsure of what else to say, he continued, "I come out here often to unwind." Sensing his mild awkwardness, she offered him a warm smile. "It feels like a hidden sanctuary, doesn't it?" "I'm glad it's all right for me to be here." He nodded, folding his arms behind his back to resist the habit of crossing them over his chest. "I don't think you're intruding at all, actually. I didn't even look to see if anyone else used this place, so what kind of herbs are you gathering?" Hana's enthusiastic gaze swept over the rows of fragrant leaves. "I'm taking classes at the local Herbal Medicine Institute. We have this new project to study local plants and discover their healing properties firsthand. Right now, I'm collecting lemon balm and mint for a tea blend. It's supposed to help with muscle aches and promote calmness." "You said muscle aches," he repeated, brightening with interest. The tension in his shoulders and legs was relentless. "That sounds useful." "It is," she replied. "Would you like to try some? Once I get back home, I'll brew it. I could bring a fresh infusion next time I stop by." He hesitated, picturing how odd it might look if a martial artist accepted an herbal tea in the middle of the courtyard. But he caught a hint of amusement in her eyes that dissipated his self-consciousness. "I'd really appreciate that," he said with a small nod. "The truth is, I sometimes push myself too hard." With that single admission, June felt a barrier lift between them. Hana appeared genuinely pleased by his acceptance, and she promised to return the following afternoon. He watched her go, then meandered through the garden paths, inhaling the lingering fragrance of mint, feeling a new sense of peace settle over his busy mind. The next day, true to her word, Hannah arrived carrying a small thermos. This time, June was in the garden already, slowly going through a kata that emphasized precise footwork and controlled breathing. Pulling off his training jacket, he cooled down with a few stretches before approaching her. She opened the thermos, and a comforting waft of mint and lemon teased his senses. "You can try it while it's still warm," she offered, pouring a small amount into a paper cup she'd brought. June sipped carefully, noting the earthy taste of lemon balm and the bright, refreshing tang of mint. Heat spread through his limbs, easing stiffness in his shoulders. "That's really nice. It's soothing but not too strong." Hannah's eyes lit up. "I'm so happy you like it. There's a trick to getting the mint just right without overwhelming the lemon balm. I spent a few extra minutes adjusting the ratio." "Thanks, it helps," he acknowledged, feeling his typical rush of gratitude. "I owe you one." She quickly waved off his words. "It's just a little tea. I should thank you for letting me use this courtyard without worrying about stepping on your training time." They fell into a companionable conversation, the sun warming the rooftops as they swapped small stories. She told him how she'd grown up in a household where natural remedies were used for every cough or bruise, and how she wanted to become a certified herbalist to continue her family's traditions. He spoke about the rigors of martial arts tournaments and how his gentle nature sometimes made it hard to keep up with the aggression required in the ring. Hannah perked up at this, gently pointing out that a caring heart could be an advantage. It encouraged discipline, respect for opponents, and a desire to master technique to avoid injuring anyone unnecessarily. It wasn't long before both June and Hannah realized that the gentle afternoon sessions they spent, sipping tea and talking, were more than a fleeting distraction. They became precious pockets of stillness amid the chaos of daily life. Sometimes they sat in silence, listening to the rustle of leaves in the breeze or the chirp of distant birds. On other days, they chatted excitedly about their respective classes, the intricacies of martial arts forms, or the surprising properties of certain herbs. One afternoon, after an especially grueling round of sparring, June limped out to the courtyard. Drops of sweat ran from his temples to his chin, and he had a fresh bruise darkening on his forearm. Hannah, already there, carefully laid out a few jars and small cloth pouches on a low white table. She noticed his pained gait and stood up, concern etched into the curve of her mouth. "That looks painful," she said softly, pointing to his arm. "I'm all right," he replied automatically, though the ache was sharper than he let on. "I just got caught by a strike. Comes with the territory." "Still," she cautioned, taking an herbal poultice from one of the jars. "Let me try something, if you don't mind." He extended his arm. Warmth radiated from the bruised spot. Hannah gently applied the cooled poultice, pressing it against his skin and instructing him to hold it in place for a few minutes. The sweetly pungent scent of arnica and comfrey enveloped him, and a soothing sensation crept through his arm. Almost instantly, he felt mellow relief tangling with the deep ache. She watched him carefully, reading his expressions. "Does it hurt less?" He tested it by tensing his fist once and rotating his wrist. "A bit, yeah," he admitted, meeting her bright smile with a thankful nod. "That's good. Keep the poultice on for a little while and I'll leave it with you, so you can reapply it later if you like." He was struck by her kindness. People praised his martial prowess often enough, but rarely did anyone nurture him in return. Used to tending to his body mostly with stoic self-discipline, he found her gentle approach almost disarming. As she packed her jars and pouches, he found himself blurting, "Thank you, honestly. That helps more than you know." Hannah's eyes flicked up to meet his, and for a moment, the courtyard went still. A bird twittered from the distant rooftop. She nodded, though her cheeks betrayed a flush of happiness. With a soft laugh, she confessed, "I'm just glad my remedies are actually doing some good. That's all I've ever wanted, to help people feel better." In the succeeding weeks, they established a gentle rhythm. On days Jun trained, Hana would appear to observe him silently for a while, always carrying fresh herbs. She would stay long enough to see if he needed any relief afterward. Sometimes she brewed tea, sometimes concocted soothing salves, and occasionally she went about her own herbal research, analyzing leaves with small magnifying lenses. Their conversation ranged from light banter to deeper reflections. June found himself confiding in her about his parents' expectations, how they supported his martial arts but secretly fretted about him getting hurt. Mina, in turn, spoke of her classmates and the complexities of studying time honored traditions in an ever modernizing world. One day, she offered to show June a few herbal recipes, sensing his curiosity. They sat side by side on a small wooden bench, mortar and pestle between them. She explained the qualities of each dried leaf she fed into the mix. The rhythmic grinding relaxed them both, blending the pungent scents into a single heady perfume. Each swirl of the pestle felt hypnotic, in sync with the conversation that flowed so naturally they hardly noticed how fast the hours passed. In August, a powerful heat wave swept through the town. The sun beat down mercilessly, and training in the dojo became suffocating. Despite the oppressive warmth in the garden, a surprising breeze kept the plants alive. Even so, the general hush of the place was broken one afternoon when June arrived, his face flushed not only from the weather, but from frustration. He'd lost an important match that morning, and the disappointment weighed heavily on him. Hana, who was quietly pruning the rosemary, picked up on his tension immediately. She carried a jug of water over to him and poured a cool cup. When he finished drinking, she asked gently, "Bad day?" He exhaled a ragged sigh. "I lost a match today. I've been training so hard for it, it just feels like all the effort, all the discipline, I let it slip in a split second." Hana nodded sympathetically, pulling a small cloth from her bag and offering it so he could wipe his perspiring brow. Loss can teach us a lot, though. Maybe there's something to learn from this that you can't see just yet. He slumped onto the bench, thoroughly dispirited. "I know I shouldn't be too demoralized over one setback, but sometimes you second guess everything. Maybe I wasn't aggressive enough. Maybe I was too timid in that final strike." He paused, glancing at her. "I'm sorry. You probably think I'm just whining." She shook her head. "I don't think that at all. You have every right to feel disappointed. Only you know what it's like to be in the ring. But your softer nature is something I admire. It's one of the reasons you're so strong in a different way. The strength to show kindness even as you compete." Her words, full of genuine admiration, worked like a balm on his wounded pride. He pressed his lips together, the tension in his knotted muscles slowly smoothing out. A gentle hush fell over them, punctuated only by the buzz of a passing dragonfly over the garden pond. Hana, her gaze unwavering, set a hand lightly on his forearm. That simple touch made him more aware of her presence than ever before. The hush of the garden enveloping them, the unspoken tenderness that had begun to shape their companionship. When the caretaker came to check on the plants, June and Hana realized they had been talking for hours. Without a specific plan, they ended up parting ways quietly, yet with a new understanding crystallizing between them. As the summer days stretched on, June poured himself into training for his next competition. Though the schedule was punishing, he always found a moment to slip away to the courtyard and check on the garden. Sometimes he caught fleeting glimpses of Hana, stooping over the cilantro beds or surveying the chamomile. Each time, his heart leapt with anticipation. Their afternoon sessions became sacred rituals, a momentary escape from the intense demands of fighting. He realized he was no longer simply seeking the garden's calm, but her company and the gentle acceptance she offered. One late afternoon, after finishing his drills, he found her sitting on the backpack she carried, resting by the plot of mint. She was reading a thick, leather-bound text, underlining passages with a pencil. The sun's glow was slanting over the rooftops, creating shifting patterns of gold on the wooden deck. "Studying?" he inquired, easing into a seat beside her. She set the book aside, nodding. "Midterm exams soon, and we're supposed to do a demonstration of a healing technique we've learned. I'm a bit nervous." He tilted his head, curiosity sparking in his gaze. You? Nervous? You're so composed when working with all your herbs. She shook out her shoulders in a little shrug. That's because there's rarely an audience except for you and the occasional caretaker. Standing in a room full of professors who will judge me is a different story. I worry I'll mix something incorrectly or forget crucial steps. Understanding her anxiety all too well, June nodded sympathetically. I guess in some sense it's like stepping into the ring to be judged by the referees and audience. It's not easy. But think of it this way: you're going to do exactly what you've practiced countless times, right? Focus on the knowledge in your mind and the confidence in your heart. The rest often falls into place. Hannah smiled, love glimmering behind her eyes as she watched him. You're really good at talking me down from these worries. She paused briefly, fiddling with the corner of her book. If it's not too strange a request, would you let me, well, could I demonstrate some of my healing practices on you before my exam? It would help me prepare. A laugh rumbled in June's chest, equal parts surprise and direct affection. I'd trust you with anything by now. Of course you can use me as your test subject. Her eyes crinkled in relief, and by the time they parted that day, both of them were alight with the knowledge that the bond they'd forged transcended mere camaraderie. They chose a quiet Tuesday afternoon for the demonstration. Either the dojo's midday classes had ended and the courtyard was typically empty. The plan was that June would pretend to be a weary athlete suffering from a variety of aches, and Hannah would apply remedies step by step, as though presenting to a panel of experts. She spent the morning preparing small pouches of dried herbs and jars of salves, neatly labeled. Meanwhile, Jin decided to simulate an actual training day by doing an intense workout before stepping outside, ensuring he was genuinely sore and somewhat stiff. At the appointed hour, they found themselves under the shaded awning of the courtyard. The energy shimmered, partly from the lingering summer heat, partly from their nervous excitement. Hannah laid out her materials like a seasoned practitioner. First, she explained how to prepare a muscle-relaxing compress featuring chamomile and ginger. Then she brewed a quick tea, describing the herb interactions in detail. June listened intently, occasionally offering a nod or question to mimic an exam scenario. Yet behind his composure, he couldn't help noticing how gracefully her hair framed her face, how gently her hands moved as she measured out powders. The rhythm of her voice drew him in, and he admired the confidence she exuded when immersed in her passion. When she finished, she looked at him expectantly. Well, were my explanations easy to follow? June pretended to be a fussy examiner, producing a playful, serious expression. He drawled. Your knowledge of herbal interactions is thorough. The compress demonstration was well presented, and you showed confidence in measuring the ingredients. I'd pass you with honors. His teasing tone dissolved as he set a hand over hers. In all seriousness, you were incredible. I can't see how anyone would mark you otherwise. A brilliant flush colored her cheeks, and their eyes locked. The hum of cicadas buzzed gently as if giving them space to share the moment. Then Hannah raised her other hand, gently touching June's shoulder where she'd recently applied the salve. You promise it's not too tight? It's perfect, he confirmed, voice husky with emotion he didn't quite know how to name. She started to pull away, but he lightly clasped her wrist. The sunlight danced over the pair of them, painting the garden in pinkish gold shades. Uncertainty rippled in her eyes, replaced by anticipation as June gently drew her closer. Their breath mingled in the quiet, and time seemed to slow to a hush. He began, then paused. A part of him felt guilty for wanting to interrupt her studies with something personal, but another part of him knew how precious this was. I want you to know how much I look forward to these afternoons. It's not just the teas or the salves or the quiet, it's you. You've made me see there's more to strength than just fists and feet. You've shown me a tenderness that makes me want to be a kinder person. She opened her mouth slightly, her eyelashes fluttering as she absorbed his words. I feel the same way, she murmured, voice trembling with honesty. I first came here thinking the garden was my haven, but then I got to know you, and I realize it's the generosity in your spirit that makes this place feel truly safe. June slid his fingers along the back of her hand, his breath shallow. An electric shiver passed through him. He wanted to say something else, to form words that would convey everything he felt, but conversation no longer seemed to matter. All at once, any lingering distance evaporated, and there, in the courtyard, they embraced. It was gentle and heartfelt, devoid of any grand flourish, yet it was the kind of embrace that held promises of comfort, unity, hope. When they parted, the sky had turned a soft, dusky blue. Stars pricked the horizon. Hana carefully gathered her herb jars, and Jun shouldered his bag of training gear. Together, they made their way out of the courtyard. Their steps felt synchronized, their arms occasionally brushing, in a comforting closeness that neither pulled away from. By the time they reached the narrow hall leading back into the main building, they realized they couldn't recall a time they'd felt so at ease. Summer gradually gave way to the crisp warmth of early autumn. Leaves in the courtyard changed from vibrant green to subtle gold. Despite the shift in seasons, their connection did not wane. Hana passed her exam with flying colors, telling June about every highlight the evening it ended, and he listened with an admiration that made her cheeks glow. Meanwhile, June competed in his next martial arts tournament, internalizing the lessons from his prior defeat and channeling them productively. Though he faced stiff opposition, his focus never faltered. He fought with clarity of purpose instead of aggression, using his skill rather than raw force. In the final match, he emerged victorious. Friends and fellow students clamored around him after the victory, praising his form and grit. However, amidst the cheering, his eyes roamed for a familiar figure, and there she was, Hana, standing near the edge of the swirling crowd, her herbal bag slung across her shoulder. The moment he spotted her, his heart soared as though it had been waiting for that moment all day. She offered him a proud smile, and he excused himself from the throng of well-wishers. With his trophy balanced in his hand, he pressed forward until he could pull her close. I did it, he murmured, breath still ragged from the match. He could smell lavender and pine, subtle traces of her herbal practice. She beamed, wrapping her arms around him. Congratulations! That was incredible, but you already know that. I'm so happy for you. Let's step outside, he whispered, leading her away from the roaring applause. They slipped out a back door, finding a quiet patch of grass where they could hear distant cheers but remained cocooned in their own space. June held her hands, gazing at the smile that had become so precious to him. Your teas and salves helped me recover enough to train well, but more than that, this wouldn't be half as meaningful if you weren't here with me. She shook her head, brushing off the praise. You earned this with your hours at the dojo. I just provided a bit of comfort. He placed the trophy on a nearby bench and pulled her closer. You gave me confidence I didn't know I had. You helped me see that merging kindness and strength is possible. I don't want to do this without you by my side. Hana's eyes glistened. I'll always be here, she promised, voice catching in her throat. And I know you'll be here for me whenever I need to find that stillness in a chaotic world. They lingered there, standing so close that the boundary between them felt porous, as though they could truly sense each other's heartbeats. A gentle breeze rustled the twilight air, scattering fallen leaves around their ankles, weaving them into that moment of serenity. Neither felt the need to say more. In the hush, her lips curved into a radiant grin, and he returned it with a quiet, joyful laugh. In the days that followed, they continued their afternoon meetings, sometimes in the courtyard, sometimes in other corners of the city. In each place they found a pocket of calm, whether it was a tiny greenhouse behind her institute, a secluded rooftop near the dojo, or the old garden that had witnessed so many of their shared moments. Their routines blended easily. She'd craft the next herbal mixture, he'd fine tune a new martial arts technique, and both would compare notes on how to find balance between self improvement and caring for one another. At times, the world would throw them hurdles. June might leave for a distant tournament, and Hana would find herself buried in clinical studies. Yet always, when afternoon light slanted across the city, painting the sky in mellow hues, they'd think of each other, remembering the transformation that had occurred among the mint leaves and rosemary sprigs. As they grew, both as individuals and as a supportive partnership, it became clear that something profound had begun within that courtyard. The martial artist with a gentle heart had discovered the healing power of compassion, layered with muscle memory and dedication, and the aspiring herbalist had found in June a spirit kindred to her own, someone who valued empathy as deeply as any fighting skill. They had entered each other's lives in a moment of need, forging a quiet bond that neither had anticipated. But that was the beauty of it. The best stories often began in the most unassuming corners of the world, like a small green garden behind a training hall, where the scent of lemon balm and mint mingled with the soft shuffle of feet on polished wooden floors. There was no grand finale or urgent cliffhanger in their story, just a steady blossoming of mutual respect and affection. Whenever afternoon sunlight beamed upon them, sipping tea or sharing a faint smile, each felt the other's presence like a comforting promise. Their relationship was an ongoing act of kindness, an ever evolving dance that drew from June's disciplined stamina and Hana's quiet devotion. And in that dance of martial strikes and herbal leaves, they discovered the rhythm of healing that bound them together.